Hello, seekers. WYLD of WYLD Tarot and Wild Moon Medicine Collective here, and I'm bringing back one of my favorite guests once again to the podcast. We have Keath Silva here to offer his medicine, his magic, and his work, and we are going to dive into a delicious and spontaneous conversation around the Hanged One, gender, and whatever else chooses to arrive as we share space here today. I'm so excited to share this second conversation. This will be part two of Transanimystical Musings. If you'd like to catch the first one from 2021, I highly encourage you to check that out. It was really juicy, and I'm excited to see how we deepen together today. So, welcome to the podcast, Keath.
Thanks so much, Wild. I'm really happy to be here and just thinking about the Hanged One in a whole new perspective. Like this conversation we're having now, I know for myself, and I'm imagining for you, we're like in a whole new place.
Mm.
So it's amazing to repeat something and be like, and who am I now?
Yeah, I love that. I love that permission and that opportunity as well that we really are all fluid humans changing constantly based on the season and the day and our traumas and our experiences and um yeah, when we can offer each other that space to not be the same moment to moment, really beautiful things happen.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. I've been so questioning like society's worship of fixedness, that somehow those who do the same thing over and over and are really solid in their identity and it doesn't change, like those are the people that are somehow responsible, or that we would want to seek after that type of ideal.
Mhm.
Persistence and repetition and staying the same. I really question that, because life, everything is changing, everything, nature is changing all the time. We're all changing all the time.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Mm. That thread really feels linked to what I've been thinking about with regards to capitalism and white supremacy, this idea that it's always about expand and grow and getting bigger, and there's never any space for the contraction or the ebb or the pause. It's kind of that they're
Mhm.
woven together in that way, like this is the path. Grind, keep moving forward, stay the same.
Yes.
Ooh,
Also
this is gonna,
celebrating shape shifting and change in the dark.
yeah. Which leads so beautifully to the Hanged One, which is, as we were talking about before we hit record, like the archetype of holding space in that transition and how it's uncomfortable as we move towards being truth. And that truth is changing, and sometimes we have to look from a different perspective and literally hang ourselves upside down to see the wholeness of a situation.
Mm-hmm. It's so true. And I notice so much when I embrace change, I also see the things that don't change.
Mm.
If I'm open to the things that are changing inside myself and making different choices and having new experiences, it's like, okay, and what are the pulses that are always still there, that are a part of my soul or my gifts, or are part of the earth, the way the sun is always rising? Like, if I'm willing to let go and change and shift, I also start to really notice, like, what are those deep seeds that I just naturally tend, that are always there, they just keep coming back.
Mm. Like that essence that
Mm-hmm.
we're all born with.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
But if
Mm.
we're so stuck in a structure that's often defined by someone else, it's a lot harder to see what are the seeds that shine through. What are the part of us that never dies?
Mhm.
What is our truth? What is the kernel of our truth, regardless of the structures we build or the um, organizations we're in or belief systems we adhere to?
Mm. Mm.
Break down those systems and shake stuff up. What's left?
Yeah. Ooh, that's such a big, bold invitation and often so challenging to step into because we cling so much to that the structure of those belief systems that and outward systems that we've subscribed to. We almost fight for them or get distracted and judge if others aren't holding the same. Yeah, I'm hearing you say you have really in your personal life and work been removing all of those distractions and getting down to the core.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And realizing like there can be such a false comfort in, the idea of being told from the outside what we're supposed to do and who we're supposed to be, or false comfort in the denial, around white supremacy or whatever it is. It's like this cozy, sickening comfort. And it can be scary to start taking those pieces apart and looking at the truth of what's underneath. But it's so exciting.
So exciting. And yeah, and you mentioned scary. It's like a whole spectrum of sensations that we might not prefer, like scary, uncomfortable, embarrassing, like edgy, all of the things that our culture really encourages us to avoid.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Everything in the dark.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just had this flash of stinging metal and how potent that sting can be and how useful, even though I don't like it. How it has good medicine in it, that sting.
Absolutely, yes. And that pain is part of this. I think a lot of the structures that we build around ourselves, that society builds around us, is to avoid pain, is avoid facing our painful history and the trauma of oppression. And there's really painful realities out there. And most of us have gone through really painful childhoods and traumas in our lives. And there's a just like systemic avoidance of feeling deep pain and loss and grief and rage. And so we pile structures all around ourselves to try to buffer out, and do addictive things, just constantly trying to distract from this deep pain. And over the last couple of years during the pandemic, I went into that pain. And it is the deepest medicine. It is home to be able to be present with ourselves in the deep root of our pain.
Hmm.
All creativity just like comes from that place, to really come to know ourselves and stop avoiding what is just so hard to look at, but is just so full of richness and gifts. And our
Hmm.
joy is in there too, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Our ability to experience joy is in equal measure to our ability to digest and feel the grief and the sorrow and all of the things that our brain might say are negative, but they're not. They're just part of the spectrum. Wow, so we're already diving into lots of spectrums today. There's lots of spaciousness. As we were talking about structures, I felt like, ooh, should we begin with our land acknowledgement so that we can set that space moving in?
Sure, Wild. Appreciate that so much. And with a land acknowledgement, just like any other structure or format or repetitive action, like I think there is a danger of getting stagnant in it and be like, oh, now we're doing land acknowledgements,
Mhm.
everything's all good. And it's not all good. And there's a really, really long way to go. And I have a lot to learn. I'm always open to feedback from Indigenous people about land acknowledgements and about everything. Um, And what I've done over the years is constantly rewriting land acknowledgements, listening to other people's land acknowledgements, listening to what Indigenous people say for their land acknowledgements, shaking it up, go learn some more, feel some more. Like I want to write these from being willing to be open to the pain of what it means to be living on a piece of land where genocide occurred, where the oppression continues, where there's such loss and tragedy. I want to come from that place, not from just checking a box and looking good, and trying to file it away somewhere so we can go on with what we are here to do.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't feel like there's any right way to do it. I just feel like doing a land acknowledgement is like a tiny like tear in the ocean of the effort that's needed from all of us to heal from from the things that have happened on this land, from the genocide, from the trauma of oppression, and like the ocean of effort that we all need to put in to like repair those relationships and bring the balance back, and work together to ensure that we have a place to live, that the waters are still clear and available to us, that the plants and the trees and the animals are all still here living with us. So land acknowledgement is just a teeny little tiny effort in something gigantic that will go on for generations.
Yeah, thank you for that perspective. Appreciate that. Yeah.
So I'll read the one that I'm working with right now. So I acknowledge and honor that my home is located within the ancestral territories of Indigenous peoples who have tended these lands, these plants, these waters, these mountains, these animals from time out of mind, including the Wasco, the Warm Springs, the Paiute, the Cayuse, Umatilla, Walla Walla, Kamilpa, Klickitat, Clinquet, Kawasai, Liewas, Ochichotes, Palus, Pisquas, Seapcat, Shaiks, Skinpa, Walala, Winashapam, Wisham, Yakima, and Nimipu peoples. I also acknowledge the sovereignty and the role of the 4 Columbia River Treaty tribes who continue to care for these lands, these waters, these plants, these trees, these mountains, the sky, the animals today. The Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs, the Confederated Bands and Tribes of the Yakima Nation, the Confederated Tribes of the Umatilla Indian Reservation, and the Nez Perce tribe. I offer this acknowledgement in gratitude and in recognition of the historical and ongoing trauma of colonization, with a hope, with a prayer for healing, and a commitment to change. And I also offer gratitude and thanks and blessings to my guide, my teacher, my dear friend, Miss Beatrice Torres Waite, for the Indigenous teachings that she shared with me, for sharing her heart and the gifts that touch my life so deeply every day. I also want to thank a few non-binary and trans leaders, teachers, activists, healers. I can honestly say without them, I probably wouldn't be here right now, and I certainly wouldn't be thriving. So big thanks for Mars Wright, Dylan Wilder Quinn, Alok Vade Menon, and Max Pearl.
Thank you. I can really feel in your words. My heart feels so full and heavy and open. And I really see and honor the care that you have taken in crafting your acknowledgements. I've been able to witness them and take them in over the years, and it always touches me so deeply. And I so appreciate you walking your talk in this way and continuing to teach by living your life.
Thank you, WYLD.
Yeah.
We got a long way to go on it.
Right? We have a long way to go, and we are all just individual little cells in the body of humanity, and That's all we can do is live our truth and do our best and keep showing up day after day.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I used to think I had to just burn the candle at both ends, and like there's an emergency, right? There's an emergency. So I was like, well, I'm going to do everything I can all day long. In some beautiful teachers, amazing people that you also have sat with, Aaron and Porsha of Aaron Johnson, Porsha Bede of Holistic Resistance, reminded me that it's a marathon. It's not a race, and it's not a sprint. And what is it that I could do pretty much every day, or like on a consistent basis? Like pick those things that I can actually give longevity to for the change, and
Mm.
hopefully that align with my gifts and like are actually rejuvenating for me too. Sometimes they're not, but what is it that I could sustain to do my part, you know? And then a lot of effort actually needs to go into our self-care and like making sure that I am still here on the planet, that I can be in this process with everyone for my whole life, for a long life. I used to come from more of like a sacrificial place and just pushing it, putting myself in harm's way. And there's not a whole lot of longevity in that.
Mm-hmm.
So as this little person in this huge world, like what can I keep dropping into that ocean to affect the change, to bring more love, little by little by little, and to not be hard on myself, because like beating myself up with guilt and shame and pushing myself too hard, that is not helping anybody.
Right? Yeah. I heard someone recently say increasing my own suffering does not decrease the suffering of another.
Yeah.
And that really pinged with me like, oh, okay. So part of my journey has been really exploring where have I been attempting to transmute suffering through that archetype of the martyr or the hero rather than just witnessing and being with and like feeling and then making a move outside of that place.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's tricksy territory. Like we're all learning so many new skills. It seems quantumly and like really hyper speed.
Mm-hmm. And then everything we build or every system we come up with to affect change needs to be taken down, because if I'm like, well, I'm the one leading the anti-racist groups and I'm the one doing the land acknowledgements and I'm the one always interrupting everything, and then that becomes a structure that I can hide in. That can become toxic as well. And so
Mm.
that's just my nature, is destruction for healing. Like, let's take that thing down. Let that thing go. Now what?
Mm. Mm-hmm.
What if I didn't do anything?
Yeah.
But let's try that for a minute.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm. Like really claiming where in your life you feel like you can really show up with responsibility and uncoupling from that emergency status. Mm-hmm. Mm. Beautiful. And this feels like learning. This is really such potent learning that lives in the hanged one, in that archetype. Um, in my deck, it represents a being who's hanging by one foot from a tree branch upside down, and yet they're holding a pose of meditation with a halo around the head. It's an expansive quality. It's expansion through discomfort, right? And what I'm hearing you speak about is that that's sort of the frequency that you hold, expansion through discomfort. Like it comes first from the contraction and the breaking down and that Kali fire of like what's not pure in this anymore. What has transformed in this repetitive place? Because it always happens, right? Like everything is evolving.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, absolutely. As soon as we get super comfy in our role, making the change in the world, whatever it is, like, okay, I'm not growing. If I'm feeling super secure in a world that's blowing up. Maybe
Uh-huh.
it's time to look at it again.
Yeah, yeah. My next curiosity is really pulling me towards our our shared consideration for this call of gender, and how there's a lot of comfort. People derive a lot of comfort from these boxes of gender, almost to the point of, violently wanting to fight for the boxes.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And how limiting they can actually be from that place.
Mm-hmm. I love the way you said that, fighting for the boxes. And
Mm-hmm.
I've, over time, getting more and more compassion about how it can be really terrifying for people, um, to start looking at those boxes and considering that maybe there's more to life than those boxes. And I've seen people just feel like their foundation is getting pulled out from under them. Um, and so, yeah, I mean, I have compassion even for people that are super angry towards trans people. That needs to stop, and they're terrified.
Yeah. Hmm. Ooh, the paradox in that, right? Like, both of these things are true. It needs to stop. And they're reacting out of like real terror over their ego being questioned, like
Mm-hmm,
how they
mm-hmm,
identify and work in the world.
mm-hmm. And possibly trauma that they're not addressing, because we've talked about this a few times, and Dylan Wilder Quinn really helped us with this, of the idea that perhaps everyone has gender trauma,
Mhm.
and that even if you just love the gender that you were assigned, and it matches with your body in the way the society thinks it should, somebody told you you can't be who you are because you're a girl, or you can't do this and this and this because you're a boy.
Yep.
And to be told that something coming naturally from you, usually as a young person, an art you want to express, a color you want to wear, a type of clothing, a way of moving or talking, and someone tells you you can't do that because you're a boy or you're a girl, that is traumatic loss of self and connection to self. And so I think people are threatened by trans folks, because if we can work through that trauma and be who we actually are, it shines like a mirror on the unresolved trauma that person needs to start taking a look at.
Yeah. Ooh, ooh, that's landing so deeply for me. That's a lot. That's a lot to embody. I'm just going to hold that for a moment here to recognize that your being is a trigger for other people who are uncomfortable moving in their own healing process. Yeah, there's some hanged one discomfort right there. Mm-hmm. Hmm. Oof. Yeah. And yet my brain comes, I was having this conversation with my lover the other night that we were talking about and feeling into the pronoun Z, which is separate from the language that I was brought up with, and just how much simpler would life be if we just had a word that meant human, and then you could just refer to humans, and then allow whatever was expressed to be, that it was just human expression. It could really simplify and bring people together. Yeah.
How liberating.
How liberating that could be, and fun even.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can't speak to it accurately, but there are languages that
Mm-hmm.
lean way more towards that aren't gendering things. And I think
Mm-hmm.
maybe just have one pronoun for everyone and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Like the possibilities. And when I allow my mind to soften into possibilities, and what I'm sensing is that it opens up doorways of creativity, just as you spoke about, when we really lean into our pain and those hard places, all of that creativity can be born. Think of all the creativity that can be born when we step outside of the boxes too.
Absolutely. It's exciting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And this is reminding me of your new book, Lady Death, which I'm so delighted by. I've seen it in some local stores. I've really enjoyed reading it. And I love the cover. I know that family made that for you, and it's so beautiful. And I'd love for you to introduce it and share a little if you're open to it.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, the family member is Teresa, Risa Bobisa, my daughter, who made the front and the back. And so delighted that there's a change that happened with the figure on the front and then what happens in the back. And this book is so much born out of the process we were just talking about. I really the pandemic gave me the opportunity to let go of so many things and so many engagements and involvements and pull myself deep, deep, deep inside myself, and feel that pain and really meet myself and become intimate with myself and be comfortable in solitude. And these poems came out of that process. I was transitioning my gender at the same time, and they came out of that for sure. Being able to meet that pain and feel that pain, and it also was something I had to do to heal myself. I had something happening with my body. Um, and as I journeyed in and asked my body, what do you need? Like, what's going on here? The message I got is that you're not expressing your art. You know, it was something that was stuck and stagnant and hardened. And you got poems backed up in your soul. And now it's backing up in your body. And I knew, like, to live, to heal, to be healthy, I had to start writing poetry and just started carving out that time. It's just like we're talking about a culture that doesn't honor the dark, you know, carving out time to do nothing, carving out time to reach into the depth of our creativity and make space for our creative expression. And working with clients over the years, I've seen over and over and over, if there is a creative expression that's being blocked, or we're so stressed that we don't have time to do it. And it's a privilege to have time to do it in this society. Depending on levels of oppression, it's harder and harder to have the privilege of time to be with your art. And I've just seen over and over the healing that can happen if somehow space is made to create art, to let whatever lives in us to come through as creative expression. It's just as much part of physical health, I think, as water and food and exercise. Just to let it flow through. I had to let it flow through, and it's so liberating.
Yeah.
Very excited.
I'm so excited too. And I was just so touched by several of them. And I felt this real reach, particularly to younger generations of transgender humans that are coming into their own. It's such a blessing and a joy.
Thank
Yeah,
you so much, Wild. I would love to read the one that I wrote to trans youth.
I would love that. Yes.
Okay. A message to trans kids. There are many who come before you. We are shining bright, holding you in our warmth. We are working to make the world a place where you can smile, live, and play, and be celebrated. Until then, tend the flame of who you are in your wild, creative hearts. Find us and those who walk beside you. Together, we will overcome. The world needs your light.
I
I've
don't
had
know.
a few children reach out to me, youth, and told me that was giving them courage as they fought to have their schools honor them, and they sat through board meetings, that they leaned into that poem and that we can reach back through the generations, and hopefully they don't have to go through the trauma and the hardship that we did, you know.
Yeah. Mm. Yeah. That one brings tears to my eyes every time. Yeah. And it really feels like a reach to, like, there are elders here. We're here. We're taking up space and we're here for one another. There's just such a sweetness in that call.
It really is. And it reminds me, circling back, like the idea that, like, okay, I'm a trigger for some folks, I'm a light for folks. Like, when I was a little kid, if I saw someone like me and I was like, oh, this is possible.
Yeah.
And it's important, you know, it's like every day is not good, right? But my life is beautiful and I'm thriving as a trans person. And I think it's so important for me to go ahead and show up like that and let young people know, like, it doesn't have to be about trauma and oppression your whole life. Like, you know, we are beautiful, we're resilient. The world needs our light.
Yeah. So, so much. So, so much. Yeah. I believe that there's so many lessons that transgender humans are giving to all of us by being up in and showing themselves in their truth. There's just so much shifting that's happening, and there's a lot of honor there. Because it's not an easy journey. It's not an easy journey being at the front of a wave of momentum and change.
Mm-mm, mm-mm. And we need each other, the trans community. So important. I literally wouldn't have made it through my gender transition. It is very painful. It was very painful for me. Um, and it was being able to reach out to other folks who'd already gone through it, every step of the way, just having a whole lot of trans people to talk to and let me know that it's going to be okay. Keep
Mm,
going. We're here with you.
yeah, because it's quite a lengthy journey. Would you say? Like there's many components to it. It takes time and space to really titrate that experience into the body.
Absolutely. And it's different for everyone. But depending on, you know, what becomes part of the transition, it is a huge undertaking. And and even though it's so liberating, and it is like the key to it is the key to my healing, to be able to live who I am.
Mhm.
There's little traumas that are kind of built into it to go through the process of being seen differently by the world, and to not be able to go in certain spaces anymore, and
Mm.
um, just watching your body change. There's so much that goes on that is really unsettling.
Yeah.
Unsettling, and there's, you know, health issues that can come up, and um, highs and lows, and it's intense. It's a huge undertaking.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, the hanged one, like that
Hmm.
discomfort for truth.
Hmm.
And really seeing this is my truth, and I'm willing to be in the discomfort in order to be my fullest self.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Absolutely. And I feel like I lost some privilege, which at the end of the day has been really good for me.
Mm.
It's brought a lot of understanding, because I used to walk around being seen as a white woman, and not anymore. And sometimes when I'm fully read as male, I get some new white male privilege. I'm like, oh no. And I
Mm.
can see that showing up, um, where space is made for me, because, you know, it's sir, here we go, sir. And that's really confusing and painful in itself. Um, but also, especially when I was early in my transition, um, yeah, going from, I felt like the world smiled at me everywhere I went, doors open for me. I was like, red carpet, here she comes. Um, and that's just definitely changed. I get weird looks and stares, and,
Mm.
you know, some aggression, and And I don't feel safe in a lot of spaces and places, and definitely states of the United States I wouldn't go to anymore. Um, Even parts of this state I will not go to because I don't feel safe. And I think that's important for me as a white person to experience what that's like.
Mm.
It's been,
Mm.
yeah, it's been a bit of a bummer and pretty stressful, but at the same time, super healing to get a bigger perspective of the world. Missing out on a lot when the red carpet's just open for you wherever you go, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm. I'm really feeling the humbleness in that experience. Like, ooh. Mm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and it's still just like a tiny fraction of like what Black, trans, non-binary, gender non-conform people go through. So
Mm. Whew. Again, feeling that. Yeah. Naming that I'm really hearing that you are claiming your truth, and unfortunately, that truth creates a sense of non-safety in certain spaces, in certain areas, and just naming out loud that there's a lot of violence enacted on transgender humans in in this country, and I assume all over the planet, but and that there's like definite inequity, and that Black transgender women really receive a huge amount of violence in particular. Hmm. That's really sad.
it's got to change.
It's gotta change. Yeah. Yeah. And so, yeah, that's the question. How do we invite in this change? How do we invite in this softening around the boxes of gender, right? Like how do we do this work when it's unsettling, it's uncomfortable, and we have a society that's built on this binary, like, whew, not that you have all of the answers, but like I find myself in that questioning too, like how do we go about this? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah, and it's a huge problem. Not one of us is going to solve it alone or anytime quickly. Um, but I do believe that it's an inside job in a lot of ways, you know, and that the more people that are willing to go inside and feel their own pain and look at our own traumas and take a crack at maybe being more authentic in gender, you know, across the board, and taking a look at it from the inside, I think
Mm-hmm.
is a big piece of it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
yeah, really, and for me, it's reaching across and making a bridge between cis folks and trans folks because I, it's two different universes to me. Like I like as you know, I'm relocating to Los Angeles, you know, in the next year or so. As soon as my son graduates from high school here in the Gorge, because I can be in trans community there
Mm-hmm.
and I can relax. I don't have to constantly effort to just feel safe, to just feel okay, to just feel understood. And there is just two worlds to me. Um, and the language just keeps bumping up and just clashing. And I've really appreciated people like you that are really working to understand what the trans person experiences or a non-binary gender non-conforming person's experiences. Um, and it helps me as I see you unpacking, it helps me to find ways of reaching across that barrier. Um, and it's definitely not my job. There are trans people that part of their profession. They get paid to educate. I don't want to educate a whole lot, but I'm open to the conversation and just like reaching across. And you've really helped me see ways that I can reach.
Mm, mm. Thank you. Yeah, it's a nuanced conversation, you know, and I feel like you really hit it with that. The language is bumping up. It's like our language is really immature, to to express to one another.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I've noticed that it's really hard for people who identify as cis and they feel really good with the gender that was assigned to them. And the world's just going on, and we're going to do our women's group, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do that. And I think I've noticed, and people have expressed to me, it's really hard for them to understand why something like a pronoun would be such a big deal. Like,
Mm.
what are you so upset about? And I'm hoping to find ways to kind of bridge that gap. Because I think if you don't have any experience of it or any concept of it, it's hard to have the compassion and want to advocate for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I know in previous conversations that we've had too, there's also this coupling of sexuality and gender that at least I've found difficult to untangle in my own brain space. And I think that also adds elements to the conversation as well.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. The way it's all glommed in together,
Mhm.
and gender identity and gender expression and sex assigned to birth.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
as you know, I've been like kind of cooking up a little exercise that I'm excited to go through myself as well. That goes a little beyond the gender unicorn. For people who don't know, there's like a drawing of the gender unicorn that says that these are separate experiences. They can inform and interact with each other, but your sex assigned at birth is just one thing by itself, and then you've got your gender identity, which is a whole different entity, and then you've got your gender expression, and you've got your sexual orientation. And there's sometime I want to make it like a tool that shows like these are separate things, they touch and interact, but they all need attention on their own. And just because this is this, it doesn't mean this is this.
Right. And just because this is this and this is this doesn't mean that you can't maybe change. And
Mm-hmm.
things might be fluid
Mm-hmm.
as you go through ages and stages or relationships. Like, yeah, the spaciousness to have these I can already see like the pie chart. Yeah.
Instead of a box,
Uh-huh.
dandelion seeds floating around.
Yeah. And what a beautiful way to really just to get to know yourself deeper as a human. I know we mentioned Dylan Wilder Quinn's workshop that we did together. And one of the most poignant parts was recognizing, oh, I have gender trauma as well as a cis woman. Like, oh, I've been put in a box. I put myself in a box. I
Mm-hmm.
consented to something, and I've never actually given it all the time and space that choice really deserves.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But what do I like? What do I not like? What have I just consented to because I was trained early on to just do that path?
Yes, yes. And I would venture to explore the idea that cis people getting in touch with those moments and those periods in their lives when they had to shut down the truth of who they were. And they realized, like, okay, to be safe here, to exist here, I have to not be myself. And that hurts no matter who you are. And I think getting in touch with that pain and what was lost by the gender structure that was enforced onto you, that's like a little seed of what it's like to be a trans person everywhere you go. Every time you hear ladies and gentlemen, or you're misgendered, over and over, getting the message like we don't see you, we don't welcome you, there is not a place for you here. If you will be one of us, if you'll be with us, you need to conform and not be who you are. It's extremely exhausting and painful and threatening and scary.
Yeah, yeah. And I imagine it's really hard on the nervous system.
Mm-hmm. It's exhausting.
Yeah.
Like I do know, handfuls of trans people who have been able to thrive. And a lot of them, like, it's a lot just to get through the day, sometimes just going to the grocery store. It just wipes you out, just derails.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I've noticed you wearing hats and T-shirts that have been holding your pronouns in an effort to soften some of that for yourself. And I so applaud that. And I'm also like, gosh, I wish it like that what didn't have to be a step that you had to take in order to get that care.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's like putting on a shield, like,
Yeah,
to go
yeah.
out and hopefully not be derailed again. So,
Hmm.
but anywho, you want to do the jewels of gender?
Jewels of Gender. Yes, I'm so looking forward to it.
Okay. And I want to preface it with anyone who's listening, this could bring stuff up, if it's not the moment right now. So maybe having some feelings come up or go into a deeper place, turn it off and come back later, or maybe opt out. But it also should be fun as well. So, all right. So I encourage you, Wild, and listeners to just find a position that's comfortable for you. If you're chilly, grab a blanket. If you need water, drink some water. And just find that connection with the ground, with your feet. And just seeing if there's like a little flicker of curiosity around gender, a little opening to explore. And I'm going to invite you to imagine yourself when you were a newborn baby. Just imagine being in that small body. Just how does it feel to wiggle your toes and your fingers? How does it feel to be you in this physical form? And come to that moment where you realize that you have genitals, just like you explored and feel into all the different parts of your body. You have beautiful shapes and forms between your legs. And I invite you to just be with the form flow and the feeling from the inside. Just being present with its essence, its being. Just meeting this part of yourself before anyone labeled it, before anyone assigned your role in society based on this beautiful structure, this fleshy manifestation. To be present with it before your way of dressing, what kind of relationships you can have, who you can love, what your favorite color is, what your interests are, before your role in society is determined by these shapes and folds of flesh. And just put all those labels aside for a moment and just be present with your own body. Sending love to this part. And so, what was decided for you, whether it was male or female or intersex, that's your sex assigned at birth. Somebody medically assigned you a sex at birth. And then attached to that, your gender expression, and your sexual orientation. So we're going to take all those off of it and just celebrate being human in a body without those labels. And then I invite you to imagine yourself as a child or a teenager in a moment when you had an inner experience of who you are. A moment of joy or creative expression, or love, that you feel who you are on the inside. Just as you learn and you grow, you start to sense like a deeply held feeling of your own gender, which is independent from your sex assigned at birth. Like, what gender do you resonate with? Who do you feel yourself to be on the inside, regardless of what anyone else tells you? What is your relationship with yourself around gender? You might resonate with non-binary or gender non-conforming or gender queer, beyond all genders, agender, gender fluid, female, male, something else. Maybe there's a word for it that's you've never heard before. Maybe it's a combination of all these things. Who are you on the inside? This is your gender identity. And then I invite you to imagine yourself now. And if there were no limits placed on you on how you could dress, how you could move, talk, the way you interact with people, how would you dress and move and talk and interact in the way that feels most authentic to you? What colors or styles would you want to paint your nails or wear makeup? Carhartts? What is it? What floats your boat? What brings you joy and euphoria? What name would you delight in being called? What pronouns taste delicious in your mouth? What bathroom do you wish you really could go into? Which team or group do you want to be a part of? How can you express your creativity and your joy through your presentation? This is your gender expression, which could be different than your gender identity, which could be different than your sex assigned at birth. Now, with all this wonderfulness in your body, your gender identity, that relationship with yourself, your gender expression, which is your relationship, how you relate to others around your gender, how you bring it out into the world. Imagine yourself right now again and ask, if I had no pressure from society on me, who would I really be attracted to? Would it be people of my own same gender, people of a different gender, people of many genders? Has this changed and flowed over my lifetime? Am I still questioning? This is your sexual orientation that is distinct from your gender expression, your gender identity, and your sex assigned at birth. I invite you to imagine that these 4 different entities are balls of light, different colored light. And just imagine them moving freely and flowing and interacting with each other. As you tune into the part of you that never dies, your true, true spirit, your essence. Inviting your essence to expand and shine through these bubbles of light. And imagine your community, people around you, and all their little bubbles of light. And again, feeling the ground beneath you and just sending yourself appreciation for your openness and your curiosity. Sending tenderness to any parts that are scary or painful. And if you care to, just joining me in sending out a wish and a hope and a prayer that we can live in a world where everybody's little bubbles of light can flow freely, not squashed by anybody else, shining bright, bringing joy, bringing healing, bringing the gifts from our ancestors. Whenever you're ready, you can gather yourself back up into this moment, into this body, into this place. Really open to hearing from you, WYLD, and also any listeners, what that brought up for you.
That was really beautiful. I can feel that reorganizing things in my brain a little bit, and yeah, I was particularly struck with the gender expression and feeling into a long period of my life in my 20s, my early 20s, where I really enjoyed wearing like overalls and I shaved my head and really had this period of feeling myself in a different way. And um, yeah, just honoring that and giving space to that experience. And yeah, seeing how the cages in my brain didn't really ever want to think about that because I dubbed myself, you know, a certain way, right? Like you're a girl, you're just being weird or whatever. Yeah, yeah. I love that. I love that that spaciousness and that ability to play. It feels very playful. Like, oh, you're you were born with a set of genitals in some way, and there are all these other layers of you that are not indicative of that. Yeah. Thank you for sharing.
You're so welcome.
hmm Yeah. As you were sharing that, did anything come up for you? Did that bring anything to the surface for you?
It wasn't the first time I've ever done that. And it brought up bubbles of joy. I could see those little rainbow bubbles. And I feel really happy because I've done this work really deeply about all those different areas over many years. And I feel so satisfied in knowing that I am living who I am. Flowing.
Mm.
So I feel celebration sharing that.
Mm. Yes, celebration.
Mm-hmm.
That's such a juicy word. And I've always really appreciated this about you and your work is that even as you invite people into the depths, you always partner it with that joy or that celebration and helping to digest the experience. Bringing in a little fairy dust, a little unicorn magic, just like allowing it to to be all of it. at the same time. It doesn't have to all be heavy, even though there's a lot of heaviness in it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm.
So much medicine and play and laughter.
So much. It really helps to bring us back to that inner child, that inner being that was in touch with all of this essence and who we were. Yeah.
Yeah.
This exploration is really leading me towards, as we're coming to the close of our experience here today. It's just reminding me of some of the transanimystical sessions that I've shared with you, and how you bring this magic and this medicine to your work, and I'm wondering if you would like to share with people a little bit about that piece of your work and how we can meet you there and so forth.
Thanks so much. Wow, I'm so honored that you've come and received that. And it is what I love to do. And it reminds me of this gender jewel, jewels of gender experience, because I have found a way to just bring who I am to my work. And even though a lot of the different pieces did involve, some years of study and definitely working on the crafts and everything like that for sure, there's a way in which I can just express the thing I did as a kid through this.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I'm just someone that I see lots of different levels to things, and usually feel like I'm halfway in the spirit world and halfway here. Um, and I don't just do one thing. I'm I'm holding many different realities at once. And so by bringing in body work with hot stones, with herbal medicine, with sound healing, with drumming and deep states of connecting with just the core of your being, and just weaving all of that together into this alchemy that creates a space that invites like all parts of you. Yeah, maybe really wounded parts, but they're welcomed. We invite in the healing power of nature, mountains and rivers and rocks and trees and plants. And I have the actual plants there. Sometimes people also have an herbal consult, and I'll create physical medicines that they take home. But everyone who comes through the door has a whole bouquet of plants that's been gathered for them. And I meditate on the person before they come, and then I walk in the garden and I ask which plants want to help that person that day. And I bring those. And so everyone who comes is having, whether it's rosemary or lavender or catnip or motherwort or cedar, placed on their body for healing. And just the aroma of plants, the deep, deep green healing, revitalizing force of the plants can both pull out stuff people are ready to let go of, can just revitalize and fill, and can remind us of who we are. In all of our ancestries way back, people and plants have been in deep together.
Mm, mm.
And so with all these different elements and this deep held space of compassion, people, there may be tears, there may be expressions of feelings, and finding not only maybe things that need to be released, but often finding just in that place of being held in compassion and being all parts of you welcomed. A common experience is people finding a part of themselves that they left behind. Even like you said, where is that one that shaved their head and was wearing, like, as society tells us who we have to be, or as really hard things happen to us, we can just leave by the wayside or bury parts of ourselves that are essential to us. And they often hold gifts and creativities and tools and energies that when they're welcomed back into the body, back into the life. I always, when I sit after the whole session, I sit and talk to the person about what their experience was. And every time there's like a radiance and a glow and a sparkle in their eye, because they've tapped into that deep part of who they are. And I love to talk to them in the months or years after, where they went inside themselves. And it's not something I'm doing. I have a skill of holding the space, but it's that person finding that within themselves with the help of nature, that those some of those moments in those sessions changed their life path in their career, or majorly changed a relationship, or brought in a baby. And I just believe what we do in those deep places when we're really resonated with and held can really shift things to a place of healing. So come on in. I do Transanimystical Healing sessions online. You don't get the body work necessarily, but everything else. And we do it over Zoom. And then my ultimate favorite is when people come into my red healing womb room and get to receive the whole 9 yards. And a full-on session is 3 hours. I can do it in 2, but the best is 3, because there's room for everything, and then time to integrate, ground before you go back out the door.
Yes, yeah, I can personally attest to this, to the 3-hour session. I've experienced several of these, and we've worked together to create a journey for me as I've been moving through some transition spaces, speaking of the hanged one, in my own life. And so I highly value your work. And for any listeners, I so support and recommend visiting this beautiful human and partaking in his medicine, and doing yourself a real favor in stepping into this work. I personally experienced several soul retrievals, and just a recombining of myself, like really coming back into wholeness in some really unexpected and beautiful ways. So there's my little stamp there. It's life changing. Everyone should have a transanimystical healing session. Oh, this has been such a treat and such a joy. Thank you so much for sharing time and space with all of us and offering your deep wisdom and all the feelings and your truth. I really appreciate you.
Thank you so much, WYLD. I appreciate you too. You've been an instigator for me, and a support, and an ally, and just such a creative, fun friend.
Need more of that. We need more friends in the world, right? Yeah, that's what's going to change this world, when we start being friends with one another. Thank you. Do you have anything else you'd like to share? How people can find your work before we come to a close?
Yep, everything's in the show notes.
Yep.
Website, Instagram.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Keath, and I hope to have you again. If you're interested, we can continue these conversations.
We've only just begun.
Only just begun. Thank you so much. Have a beautiful day.
Bye, WYLD.